This is me. I'm doing about localization and design today, and just so that we have a structure here, I'm just going to talk about myself for a while, what localization actually is, and how do we actually design for culture, language, and also maybe visualize what localization can be maybe in this area. So, just a quick background, I am a product designer. I'm formerly from Singapore Press Holdings. It is a news publication in Singapore. It's the most biggest and established news publication in Singapore. Right now, I'm taking a break, but I was a designer for 2.5 years, and these are 3 products that I was working very closely with back in Singapore. The first one is the Straits Times. So this is our flagship product, and also the biggest news publication in Singapore. So imagine the New York Times, but all Singaporeans read this. We have around an average of 2 million readers a day, so that's quite a big audience. And also Temamurasu is a very interesting app. It's a new app and it's a cultural informative app for young readers. So you can see the first one is for our general public, the second one is for youth audiences, and for the last one would be Berita Harian. This is my baby product when I started design 2 years ago, and it's a Malay language daily newspaper. So a lot of tools here are very localized and cultural specific for our Malay Muslim users. And I'm going to be talking more about how we build some of the features right later on. So, what am I doing here? I was from Singapore, and we have also our sister chapter, Singapore Product Design, which Brian had talked a little bit about it. We host events monthly as well, and the next event would be the motion design workshop, which I wouldn't go into detail because Brian will talk about it later. Yeah. So do check it out if you can on October and details later. But right now, as you can see, I'm like 12 hours different away from my home. I'm right now traveling around for 3 months, and I'm also, doing more self-discovery, learning new skills like motion design. I do music at the side, so being here is like a place where I can just indulge in jazz music. I do a bit of rock climbing, and also because I'm residing in Connecticut right now, I did a little bit of community events right there. So I started this product design at Connecticut. Yeah. So without further ado, I just want to introduce what localization actually means to me. So it's not just adapting your content into local languages as well as culture. It's not simply translating your text elements, which is what a lot of us or designers tend to misunderstand, but also optimizing our product UX and UI to reflect the identity. So when we talk about localization, it boils down to human-centered design and inclusivity, but not just adapting your user's pain point and perspectives, but also going to the background of where the user is from, what kind of sense of belonging that person has from, be it a microculture or even in a region that they are living in. So just to give you a little bit of reference here, McDonald's does localization really well. I really love what they did on McDonald's Japan app. So they have this very cute app for kids where they teach you how to recycle your McDonald's plasticware, and also how to tips on being environmental friendly, and that really ties back into the whole Japan culture of cleanliness and recycle, reuse and reuse. And also right here for India's McDonald's app, they have this really cool live talk show and entertainment show called I'm Loving It. So they kind of bring a little bit on the McDonald's slogan and also their Bollywood entertainment scene, where users can channel into the show, listen to podcasts, and also tap into local musicians. So yeah, I think this is a really cool way on how they have localized their app and their features based on each individual country. And also another great metaphor which I feel, it's the travel adapter. I am sure everyone uses that whenever they travel around. I do that now. You have your different plug types for all across the world. You have American plug type, European plug type, and also what I'm used to back at home, which is the UK plug type. And also the best of all worlds, which is the USB port that we all liked. So, well, so how do we extend localization? There are 3 ways of doing so. first culturally, and also this means tailoring experiences that enhances inclusivity to a certain group of culture. So it's not just tied to just a race, but also what you resonate with or what you truly belong to. And also beyond that, there's also a regional localization. So that also meaning understanding the diversity within a society, and also contextualizing societal patterns in the ad or the product itself. And lastly, I would say a grand scale, which is international localization. So you have, like, for example, products like Stripe, FinTech, they usually use this technique and they apply standards and practices at a global scale. So things like making sure currency types are appropriate, date formats, and even like reading directions. So we are used to reading from left to right, but for example, in like Arabic countries, they do read their scriptures from right to left. So these things we do take note when we design for international audience. So before that, I just want to tap in two things. One, to design for culture, and another to design for language. And I want to share about how I and my team at Berita Harian, we designed for the Malay Muslim community. So we had this project in 2020 during the pandemic. So it's called Berita Harian Sedap. So I'm not sure about you guys, but like the pandemic did reach across even to now. But in 2021, it was affecting all the local eateries in Singapore, and that includes our Muslim Malay hawkers as well. So with this in mind, Berita Harian, we actually launched this campaign, So Sedap. So that means so delicious in Malay. Yeah. And then we also launched a brand new feature called Halal Food Maps, and then encourage communities and members to support our halal F&B operations. So I just want to share a little video that we did for this campaign. Yeah, and that was one of the campaigns video that we did where we reached out to the local hawkers around the area, and after 8 months of ideation, wireframing, prototyping, and even development, we came out with this Halal Food Map feature. It was at first a temporary feature for the pandemic, but then we decided to launch it on our app actually last year, March 2022. So what this entails is for users or anybody to find and locate halal food easily around the area. So you go by distance, and also you can look at any local deals out there around your area. So this actually fulfills the need of our local Muslim community, and where like halal food is really essential to our Muslim community everyday lives. So we have massive feedback. We have around 60,000 page views the first week, and then it was such a success. We won awards as well, IMDA award for this feature. And not only the award matters, but also the impact that we've given for our community. So some reviews are like, for example, Miss Dewey. She says that she's excited and moved to hear about this initiative, and she says that, I hope with a platform like this, we can all help each other, support our local community together, and support the operators as well. And also, our former deputy editor of Berita Harian said that, we as a team believe that it's our responsibility to help our local halal eateries, and that we hope that this campaign contribute to their recovery as well. So I would say the biggest takeaway here is the design is centered around our community and our users, and not just product first business objectives, but we actually wanted to make a societal good to our community. I actually had a friend that also asked me about what this app is, and she wasn't a Muslim herself, but she has friends that are Muslim and they wanted to locate for halal food around them. So I said that this not only creates impact with the Malay community, but also create awareness for those that are not necessarily from that culture as well. Yeah. And another example of using culture as a fun feature would be Hawker Pals. So this was done by one of my friends, and in honor of Singapore's 58th birthday this year, and also our love for culture, hawker culture, they actually released this 2-week in-app game that localizes cashback points and rewards in the form of local mascots. So we have three cute characters. You can see right here, the first one is Mao Shang Wang. So what this means is, in Chinese it means in durian. So it's actually a local fruit that we all love. And Meow is like, a cat, so that's how they got the inspiration from. And then I'm not sure whether you guys know, but otters are like a big part of our culture as well. They are very cute, but also very invasive. And yeah, there's also in the headlines where otters will just attack people viciously. So we don't like them, but we can't touch them, and they just roam around, like how cats does. And that's why we have this inspiration, the otter family. And lastly, we have the Marina Bay. So this is a doctor inspired after the Merlion. So if you have come to Singapore and you see this very famous half fish, half lion vomiting statue, that's the Merlion. Yeah, so I would say if you are in Singapore anytime, do let me know. I'll let you, I will go with you and explore the first and the third one, but not the second one, of course. So as you can see here, it's a very witty way on how they adapted, culture into gamification. And I'm sure not just Google Pay does it. A lot of other, apps does it where they adapt festivals, they adapt, cultural, events. For example, the Diwali festival in Google Pay India as well. They customize the entire app into a festival-like sort of product. So that is also one way products have also adapted culture into their features. So, some lessons that I personally learned and that I researched while designing for culture is, number one, to always determine whether there is a product culture fit. Because while some solutions are really great for the culture, they are not really fit for your own product branding. So just a personal testimony, we wanted to do like a cultural info market where users can locate any events around the Tamil festivals and also have an open conversation on our app. However, because coming from news is a more serious tone, and we have a lot of, for example, censorship. So that solution wasn't really tailored to a news app. If it was like a lifestyle app, then probably. But for a news branding app, that is not a product culture fit. So when we think about culture, we always ask, our product goals align with respective culture needs, and can my product add value to that certain culture itself? And secondly, to always discover pre-misconceptions. So for example, what are some prejudices and misconceptions I should flag before designing? So we wanted to do like a brand redesign for Temamurasu also, and we were thinking what kind of icon should we use for the Tamil community. So my team, like 3 of us, we weren't we weren't Tamil members, and we thought about like using the coconut, fruit to represent the Tamil community. But after discussing with our stakeholders, we then found out that this coconut connotation is actually a negative connotation, and we didn't know that until we kind of flag it out with our editorial members. So that was really important. Can you imagine if we use that to represent our community? That would be a backlash as well. So this is really important and a lesson that I learned really hard. And thirdly, to always design with expert cultural knowledge. So ask ourselves, are our designs a good representation of our culture? And like what I mentioned, like the example before, to always emphasize on sensitivity and accessibility as well. And also lastly, don't ever skip solution testing. I think this is very important because a lot of business, we like to skip the user research part and go straight to solutioning and then launching our solutions. But when we come to culture, talking about what we want to design for the users first, solution testings are always very important. So we did like 3 rounds of concept testing before we actually launched our app in Temamurasu. So yeah, ask ourselves, are my solution user tested or simply in the assumption hypothesis phase? Okay, so that's for designing for culture. I'll move on to designing language, and I would say this is more complex than culture because it's not only about translation but also optimizing different buckets, like for example readability, when you change the scripture, the length and the size, is it possible to be read on a smaller device? Or for example, tall, dense and English-like scripts. For us, we are very familiar with English, which is in Latin script, but for example, characters like Japanese, they are a dense script, and tall scripts like Tamil scripts as well here. So there's a lot of consideration when it comes to the line height as well as the word length. And also, like mentioned before, there are some scriptures that go from left to right and also right to left. So even the information hierarchy also changes when it comes to that different reading direction. And lastly, something that I've recently found out before, masculine versus feminine terms, that is also one very, very big bucket when it comes to designing for language. So, for example, in French or in Spanish, we address in different feminine and masculine terms. So I'm not sure, but there's this kind of scenario where maybe you discovered a web page and then you click on translate because you don't understand the language, and then it comes out like question mark because the typeface isn't like it doesn't support that language itself. So a lot of times, designers, if we don't consider typefaces that support all languages or most languages, this usually comes out. So we want to avoid that kind of situation. And so how the team did at Temamurasu is that we chose a Tamil font that is legible and also well accessible, which is Noto Sense Tamil. And also to create some vibrancy and personality, we chose to pair a sans serif typeface, which is Crimson Pro. So we didn't want to do a singular font typeface, and we chose Crimson Pro to give a little bit more vibrance because it's a youth app as well. And to not only secure this pairing typefaces, we also did a side-by-side UI comparison. So this is essential for us because before we settle on one type of typography, we want to see how it works on the device. So we took the mobile tool and then we compare whenever we change the font size to see whether it's legible on the device itself. So this is, I think, one of a good technique when it comes to choosing typography. And also another example on designing language. So Duolingo is one of the best language apps or learning apps in the world, and they do take note of things like gender terms. So, for example, the English word welcome does have masculine and feminine forms. So, okay, pardon my Spanish, but it's bienvenido and bienvenida. And so they didn't want to generalize the users because you don't know whether they are a male or female. Their solution is to use we welcome you or te damos la bienvenida, and they address the learner directly with the word te, you. So by doing so, they actually avoid genderizing any users, and that is a very, very smart way, I think, to avoid and also enhance inclusivity. Yeah. Okay. So just to recap about some key lessons here. Readability is always usability, so I emphasize that design language is beyond translation, and we want to ensure readability by optimizing to what is best understood by the culture itself. And also we can think about whether some components are hard-coded versus localized strings. What do I mean hard-coded? Meaning, for example, keeping CTAs solely in English, that's hard-coded. But for example, the body content can be localized to that certain language. So you can prevent long CTAs and just keeping it singular as possible. And thirdly, to always test for legibility on mobile devices, so that meaning cross-compare designs, especially typography against mobile devices to check for sizing. And lastly, create scalable components, so that meaning flexible variants in your design system, so that whatever language that your component is, it can increase in size, and that wouldn't affect based on the mobile device. Yeah. So this is like a typical design process that my team and we usually take when we design for culture apps. So the culture aspect falls in hard during the pre-design stage. usually in research, where we do academic UXR on cultural identity, and also cross-compare whether other apps out there have also the same cultural features as well. And then we come up with concepts. So these concepts we usually come up with 2 or 3, and that is a hypothesis concept. So that's not a finalized design at all, because we're going to use this concept to test against our focus groups. So when it comes to designing culture, we want to be into the ground as much as possible. So we recommend like qualitative research, going down to the ground, talking to your users, be it guerrilla research or focus groups, and that will actually gain insightful evidence to whether your concept is successful or not. And from then on, then you finalize on, for example, one concept to design forward, and that's where I think designing for language comes into play. You engage with your content writer, your translator, or even your stakeholders as well, because they are the ones that know the product best, and sometimes they are also members from the community itself. And lastly, also developers are your best friends. They help you to design and optimize your UI to the best possible. So when it comes to QA testing, always make sure that different languages are reflected optimally across all devices. So with that, I just want to wrap up with like a afterthought question on how localization could or would look like in New York City. Personally, I have my own assumptions about this place. It's very diverse, and I really love the vibrancy of this place as well. But if you are thinking about designing for a vision or a culture like New York City, maybe these are some elements that you can consider. Yeah. So I'm open to bounce off ideas and also any questions. So thanks for listening.
Cool, we have time for a few questions for Natalie. Any questions about localization?
Hi.
Hi. So when you're designing for websites, how do you work with the fact that sometimes the browser will override the language on the page that might be local to you? How do you kind of fight that left to right to left situation? How do you design your platform? I assume you were talking about mobile apps, and maybe it didn't happen as much with that, but let's say doing it for a website, how do you kind of get that out?
So for our mobile or our web pages on our desktop, usually our information hierarchy is from left to right. I have not actually have any issues when it comes to the browser direct translation into Arabic, but I guess the best approach is always to make your components flexible in a way where the design type is specified during the development stage. So when it comes to like right to left types, developers have to know that that the start point to the end point will come from the right to the left. Yeah. But in terms of like, for example, our visual on the web page, right? Our hierarchy is always from right to left, and then our ads are always at the side. So for example, if it's from right to left, then the content and the structure wouldn't change. The ads will be always on the left, on the right, and the content will reflect based on the manner of the language. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
For culture research,
Yes.
how did you actually attack that on? You go to street vendors and like talk to them and live in a day in the life of someone who's Muslim to kind of understand that
Yeah.
culturalization?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what you did.
So I didn't catch the last part.
What were some research efforts you did to understand
Yeah.
cultural identity? Was it
Muslim user in Singapore.
day in the life, going through vendors?
Yeah, okay. So when we were doing cultural research, right, we interviewed 2 types. One is our internal stakeholders, and another one is to go down to the ground and interview a group of users that are in local hawkers as well. So there was 2 types. One are hawkers, and one are also young parents with children. So some key insights as a Muslim user in Singapore, I would say in Singapore, because it's only for Singaporeans here, is that firstly, there is not available halal options that are, for example, official, and it's really hard to find certified halal food unless you know that place or you know someone that has legal, like sort of tell you that okay, this place is halal. And another one that we found out is that there is a lack of use in the Malay language in Singapore, and that's why another feature that we did was the article translation tool, where we allow education features for users to translate Malay articles into English, and also what does it mean, like definition. So those two pain points, lack of availability of halal food options and lack of education, was what we tackled. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One more question. We have time for one more.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes I feel like there could be a problem of just like encroaching on spaces or like cultures that like maybe your team or like people who know a lot about and stuff like that. And there's a real sort of conversation of like co-opting some cultures and like holidays and stuff like that. How do you go about like determining whether or not like there should be that intervention?
So you're talking about like cultural intervention, or what do we prioritize when it comes to designing for this culture versus that cultural event? Am I right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So we do have like a roadmap, and I think it's easier for us because our app is a cultural app, like solely for example, the Malay general public or the Tamil public. So when it comes to like a big festival like Hari Raya, we do have like, for example, 1 to 2 months in advance to plan what kind of marketing, what kind of graphics, and what kind of features we want to encourage on the app itself. So for personal experience, I had a roadmap 2 months in advance, where we partner with Mendaki, which is the Malay education organization, and they wanted to feature some educational materials from MOE, which is Ministry of Education. So we had that roadmap in place of us, and we always make sure there's enough time to consider that cultural event or festival before that. Yeah, and they're pretty big, and for example, 3 or 4 times a year. So it was easy for us to prioritize or skew towards that. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Natalie.